Thank you. See, that's a big treat for me. I love the songbirds, so I'm really grateful that I lucked up and I got them on my Sunday. So it's Father's Day. We're here to celebrate Father's Day. It's a day that we put aside to honor our dad. Now, for most of us, our first relationship with our dad is one of the authority figure, the one who has the discipline over us, the one who is in charge of making sure that we're safe. And as we grow up, we come to think that dad has all the answers. He's usually right. And his role is to guide us to become the greatest potential that we could possibly become while ensuring that he keeps us safe from harm. Right? That's the role that we think. So every Father's Day that comes around, there's this celebration, not just for the average dad, but for Dad, the hero. Where's the cape, right? And if you think that I'm making this up, all we have to do is go to any store to try to buy a card for Father's Day, right? That will just depict our average connection with our dad. And I don't know about you, but I'm like, oh my God, really? Oh, no, I can't. There's not even a chance that I could use that card, right? Because we've come to this belief about the perfection of fatherhood. So where do we get that idea from? We get that idea from what is called the collective unconscious. Now, some of you are like, oh God, she's going to go deep again, this Cherie. You know what? Just keep it light, girl. Well, you know that's not how I roll, right? Okay. So where does that term come from? It comes from Carl Jung, who is one of the founding fathers of modern psychiatry. And he suggests that the collective unconscious has evolved over thousands of years in humanity. And what has come from that are called archetypes. Now, archetypes are basically just a fancy name to say blueprints. Blueprint for human behavior, blueprint for concepts, blueprint for roles. And of course, there are lots of them. There's even an archetype about a God that lives, that dies, and is resurrected. Now, you think that might only be in Christianity, but you can read about something like that in Sumerian texts, in Greek mythology, even in Native American legend. You see these concepts, these archetypes cross cultural lines and languages. They are seen in rituals and symbols that are easily recognized by everyone. So we talk about father, right? And in the archetypes, there is the great father, which is the overarching archetype, and that is seen as of the sun and of the sky, about illumination, right? And when we think of the mother, we think of Mother Earth, right? So the Father in the heavens impregnates Mother Earth. So that's your basic male-female archetype. But even in archetypes, then, we have a breakdown in masculine archetypes. There's this book that I found that I really liked, and it's called The King, the Warrior, the Magician, and the Lover, Rediscovering Male Archetypes, Mature Masculine Male Archetypes. And one of the things that I found that I love is this chart. It talks about the different male archetypes that are pretty common in our society. The bottom aspect there are the boyhood archetypes. The boyhood archetypes. And when the boyhood archetypes mature, they push then into the king, the warrior, the magician, or the lover. With me so far? Okay. And in each of these archetypes, there's three parts, tripart. The top aspect up there represents the full maturity of that archetype, while the bottom two legs talk about the shadow aspects. When I say shadow, do we all know what we're talking about? Yeah. Okay. Do I need to break it down for anyone? No. Okay. The shadow aspect. And it can be an overdeveloped shadow aspect or an underdeveloped shadow aspect. So I won't go in all of these in detail because that's a workshop. But no, I'm not plugging. But I just wanted you to be aware. The archetypes. So let's say, for instance, we look at the graph here. You can see that at the bottom we're talking about immature masculine, and at the top we're talking about mature masculine archetype. So for the edible child, right, on the overdeveloped shadow, that would be somebody who becomes a mama's boy. Where the underdeveloped one would be the dreamer. He's kind of untethered, a dreamer. And then, once that archetype, that person develops into the mature level of that particular archetype, they then will grow into the lover. And in each of these, once again, you can see that there are overdeveloped shadows and underdeveloped shadows. So for someone that goes into the lover, if they're at full maturity, that's wonderful, right? They've embraced the totality of that archetype. But if they are in the shadow aspect of that archetype, if they are overdeveloped, then they're the addicted lover. So those are the folks that are constantly looking for that one true mate, that one woman that's going to define it all. And they're on that constant quest to find her, right? But they can't commit because they're not sure if they really have her. No, you don't know anyone like that, right? Okay. And on the other side, it would be the impotent lover, the one that doesn't have that kind of passion or that drive. All right, you with me? So for each of these, you can see that there is a child that goes into the adult, the mature archetype. So I'm going to focus on the top ones. The magician comes from the precocious child. And so once again, the shadow aspects of that would be over, would be the detached manipulator, and under would be the one that is always the innocent one. Okay. And so we go across to the warrior. In their fullness, they've embraced the totality of what that is, right? If they're overdeveloped, then they become the sadists of the world. And underdeveloped is the masochist. And then we go over to the king. Now, the author suggests that the king archetype has developed through all of those previous archetypes, and that he has embraced the totality of manhood, of being masculine. The king, when it's in its healthiest place, that is the one that gives the blessings to others. That's the leader of others. He's not trying to take, he's trying to elevate others. Now, if that is not fully developed and mature, someone in that archetype could become a tyrant, where he's a destroyer as opposed to an elevator, completely narcissistic. It's all about him. If anyone goes against him, he's easily enraged and becomes very threatening and a bully. On the flip side, the one that is underdeveloped in the shadow just says, do whatever you want. They just kind of give up their power and authority in their lives. And usually they'll either be run by their wife or their mom. Don't know any of those either, do you? Okay. So when we think about our dad resides in that king archetype. With me? He embodies everything. He's the one that is totally calm and collected when a crisis happens. He's the rock that you go to when anything is amiss. He's going to be balanced and clear in decisions. And he's going to care about your well-being. So that's where we get this perfection of fatherhood from that archetype. The authors in this book has this wonderful quote that I thought was really pertinent to where we are. He says, one of the biggest problems facing men in the West is that most men are still ruled by boyhood archetypes. Boyhood archetypes. We are in a society that elevates youth. Boyhood archetypes. And haven't moved to harnessing the mature masculine. As a result, we have a society of men who act and think like teenagers. They are boys pretending to be men. Boys pretending to be men. Now, I know for some of us, we were blessed to have dads that were in the mature king archetype. But for most of us, we did not have that. And what's really interesting is that unconsciously, we spend a lot of our adult life replicating that relationship of our dad, in the hopes that in this relationship, name, gender changes as the years go on, but we still keep replicating it over and over again in the hopes that finally we will win. Finally, our dad will approve and we will be deserving of love. Names, age, gender changes. But this is what drives us to unconsciously keep recreating those childhood relationships. Got it? All right, good. So I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide, if you would, just so that they're not always staring at that chart like, oh my God, how am I going to remember that? If you want a copy of that chart, you can find it. Website is artofmanliness.com. Artofmanliness.com. So unconsciously, we're trying to get these relationships to finally win, to finally get dad's love, to finally get dad's approval. And as we do that, we are coming from a place of woundedness. We're not coming from our highest place. And I'm here to tell you that when we come from that place of woundedness, we are never going to win. We are never going to win. We're just going to keep recreating these relationships that hurt us, that we don't feel our needs are being met. And here's the way that I figured out to get through this. Two-pronged, because I always say we're divine humans, right? So psychologically, on the human side, it's about really understanding family systems. And then on the spiritual side, it's understanding some spiritual concepts. So I'm going to start first with the family systems. When I talk about family systems, I'm talking about the system that you grew up in as a kid. Those all have differing dynamics. And our parents learn how to parent, guess how? From their parents and their family system, right? So, surprise, surprise, your dad couldn't be any other way than what your dad is. Now, I know we get this and we take it really personally, that it's all about us and all about that angst. But it's simply family systems. And it also depends on where they are in their birthing order as well, right? Usually the firstborn, what's the firstborn? Responsible, he's the hero. And the baby? Immature, scapegoat, clown, right? Yeah. So my dad, for example, baby, right? He learned from his dad. And because he also had the irresponsible aspect to his archetype, he was a goof. He was a party guy. Think about it. My parents got married at 20 and 23. My dad was 23. He wasn't done partying. That was what he wanted to do. So imagine my surprise that he couldn't put my needs above his own narcissistic needs for fun, to hang out with the boys, right? The wife will handle the child rearing, and he was the king of his castle. No surprise there, right? But from experiencing that, I think it's personal. It's not. It's just family systems. Simple. He couldn't be any other way. And then from the soul aspect, here's what I personally believe. I believe that before we incarnate, we are in soul clusters. So the essence of our souls, we're in soul clusters. And before we incarnate, we talk with other souls. What do I really need when I incarnate for my highest soul's evolution? What do I have to experience? And the folks in my soul cluster go, I can support you. How do I support you? Well, I'll be your mom, I'll be your dad, I'll be your sister, I'll be your husband. Right? So that's what I believe. So that's the spiritual piece of that. So if I understand that, then that means my dad was exactly who I needed him to be. Did you hear that? My dad was perfect for me. Your dad, perfect for you. Now, before understanding these two aspects, guess where I hung out? Resentment, blame. What kind of crappy dad did I get? Look at these other amazing dads. Why didn't I get one of those, right? And that also became now a pattern in my adult life. Because now I'm conditioned to look for lack. Did you hear that? I'm conditioned to look for lack. So a miracle could appear before me, and I would be like, how come my miracle is less than that person's miracle, right? And that was my life pattern until I really got this concept on a cellular level. And I can now shift consciousness, shift my belief. Now, what I'm saying to you, it doesn't make what I experienced as a child, whether it's neglect or abuse or whatever it is, it doesn't make it okay. I'm not saying that. You see, because their behaviors or lack thereof, that's their stuff to deal with. Get me? But what's mine to deal with? Mine to deal with is the life that I am living. That's my responsibility. So do I want to be a resentful lack person? I don't know about you, but no. I want to be in joy in my life. I want to feel abundant. I want to feel the possibilities. I want to see the miracles. And I can't see them if I'm in resentment and lack. So a shift. So I'll tell you a secret. When I was 25, I started therapy. Yes, psychological therapy. Not PT therapy, psychological therapy. And one of the questions that my first therapist said to me is, what gifts did you get from your dad? I was like, woman, have you not been listening to my therapy sessions? What are you talking about? Right? I was like, nothing. And it took me a little time to find those pearls. One of the gifts I got from my dad is my love of cartoons and animated videos. You know, I bring them in, right? I got that from him. Saturday morning, we would sit down, and his thing was Roadrunner. And he would howl with laughter. Another gift that I got was my musical expression, from my dad. Another gift. Another gift is not taking myself so seriously and having a terrific sense of humor, no matter what's going on. Those are gifts. Now I'm going to ask the question from the spiritual side, what soul agreements could we have gone into together? What soul agreement could I have gotten from my dad? And I believe the soul agreement is to be able to step into my masculine and feminine energy. To be quirky. My dad was like kind of out there a little bit, but really not to be able to stand in my quirkiness, in power and joy, and enjoy that about myself without the judgment. So there's a level of acceptance that I got of who I am in that soul agreement. Do you understand the differences there? Okay, so what we're going to do, everyone should have a card, and if you don't, just raise your hand, and I'll come around after I'm done. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, put them down for now, and I'll come back to you. But we will do that exercise in meditation so that you too can have an opportunity, if you may have forgotten or may never have remembered, what gifts and soul agreements you had with your dad. So here's my conclusion. Whoever your dad was or is, if he was the mature king, you were blessed. But I also invite you to take him off the pedestal, because that's a tough place to constantly be. And not only is it for him, but it's for all the other men in your life that you compare to your dad that you have on the pedestal. It gives them a place to be seen. If you didn't have that for a dad, I invite you to release your resentments. To release your resentments of however your relationship was or is with your dad. And really embrace the family systems, embrace your soul connection, and live your life to the fullest. If you yourself have become a dad, dude, I invite you to forgive yourself. Because you've made mistakes. You're breathing. You're here. You're human. You have made mistakes. Forgive yourself. And lastly, if you are a male who decided not to be a dad, embrace and celebrate your masculine energy and the way that you've chosen to show up in the world to heal as well. Happy Father's Day.